Well, hello everyone. It seems there's another season of Game of Thrones about to start on HBO, which is really more like HBO's, hey, these actors are under contract, so let's just throw them together and see what happens. Because apparently, despite the money this franchise makes, they can't afford to actually, hire 30 more actors to properly cast it. Admittedly, that would be a lot of money, and honestly, the people watching the show probably don't care enough for this to really be an issue. But still, it's a little irksome to me. And that's not to say I want the show to be verbatim what was in the books, because quite honestly, it's a different medium that wouldn't necessarily work in all cases. And there are some franchises that have been in many different forms, be they TV, radio, movie, or book, with each one of these forms being very different from the others, but all of them being fairly good. Because I would certainly call Game of Thrones as a show an enjoyable show to watch, just not necessarily a very good Game of Thrones adaptation. Because honestly, I think the first season was the best actual adaptation, while not necessarily being the best season. Because really, the first season of the show was kind of a nice, abridged version of the first book. But as each season gets made, because they're abridging more and more and cutting out things, it deviates more and more to a point where it's gotten its own thing, really. And that's fine overall, but there are certain things about each season that kind of keep happening that bother me a little bit. Number one being Peter Dinklage, and this is more about him than his actual performance on the show, because he's passable as Tyrion Lannister. But he's a midget from New Jersey, and for his entire career, as far as I can tell, he's done this horrible faux English accent. And it makes sense in the context of Game of Thrones, but not really in the context of anything else he's ever done. So I'm just wondering how much you'd actually have to piss him off to get him to drop the faux English bullshit, and get him to go full Jersey midget for a few minutes. But at least while this show is run, we haven't had to see Peter's Dinklage yet. Another actor issue would be the chick playing Bran. She's really not ugly enough. I mean, I don't think there actually is an actress that would be ugly enough to play Bran. But I mean, this gal's tall, but she's, I'd say, fairly attractive. And while they try to ugg her up on the show, you can see underneath it. It's kind of like Charlize Theron in Monster. They're doing their best to make her look awful, but you can still see the attractive woman underneath it all. The god-awful bleaching of the hair of the chick playing Daenerys and the chick playing Cersei Lannister. These are both very attractive women, but when you put the blonde hair on both of them, it just makes them look skanky. And I know that's because they're naturally dark-haired and all their features go for a dark-haired woman. And it's just distracting to me. A lot of people don't have an issue with this, but it really bothers me personally. Because really, the number one way to ruin a woman's looks is to just have the wrong hair color on her. Because look, with the features a woman has, there's certain colors that are going to work, certain ones that aren't. In both of their cases, the blonde and kind of platinum blonde they're doing, it just doesn't work. Also, on Daenerys, they should probably bleach out her eyebrows, because you have the platinum blonde hair on her, and then the super dark eyebrows. It's kind of jarring. But the good news is, from what I'm hearing, this is the last season of Game of Thrones. So hopefully we're finally going to get the zombies fighting dragons that we all knew was coming from the very beginning. And that's kind of awesome, because where else are you going to see some zombies fighting dragons? Well, I guess you wouldn't, Dark Souls. And most fantasy settings at this point, that's kind of become kind of standard. I don't know if that's because of Game of Thrones or if, people just like zombies and dragons. Anyway, that's just my kind of open thoughts on Game of Thrones without getting into any spoilers.